Billionaire catches Black Maid dancing with his deaf twin sons, and what they did next left him stunned. In the oversized mansion with its heavy drapes and thick carpets, laughter had long departed like a guest who never found the way back. Morning light still climbed through the arched windows, but when it reached the glass of the living room table, it dimmed as if swallowed. Time was measured only by the slow ticks of the wall clock and footsteps learning restraint. Here lived two twin boys, Noah and Ethan Brooks, born in silence and raised to read the world through eyes and skin. They were deaf from birth. Their mother Emily passed away the day they were born, leaving behind a void that turned every room into a cold tank of water. Their father, Liam Brooks, a billionaire who trusted in schedules and straight lines, moved with precision between his ground-floor office and his upstairs bedroom, speaking just enough, looking just enough, standing exactly on the edge of moments that might break him. Stay with us to witness the moment that could shatter that ice. If you believe in silent miracles, don't forget to like and subscribe. Every night before the hallway lights went out completely, Liam paused at his children's doorway and silently counted 10 breaths. He never stepped farther in, as if just one more heartbeat might crack the levee he had built. He trusted in therapy sessions, progress charts, data that could be measured. But memory, the scent of cinnamon in the old kitchen, the sound of Emily shifting with a pregnant laugh, he folded into a small slip of paper and tucked into his pocket beside a blue ink pen so he wouldn't accidentally unfold it. Yet, in the silence, there was still a murmur only the patient could hear. Noah often stood in a shaft of sunlight, watching dust motes fall as if they were singing in light. Ethan had a habit of sliding his fingertips along the wooden wall, waiting for something to hum beneath his skin. They weren't lacking toys. They were lacking rhythm, the thing that gave the body courage to answer. This house was not mute. It had simply forgotten how to breathe in unison. Then, one morning, Aaliyah Johnson appeared without fanfare. She was. Black spoke low, worked neatly, carrying no shiny degrees or grand titles, just a small speaker in a cloth bag and a pair of listening eyes. She didn't enter with lectures, but with gestures, drawing the curtains at the right time, so the sun fell gently on the living room carpet where the boys often sat. Washing dishes in circles, steady as counting. Folding blankets along the grain of safety. For the first 2 weeks, she changed nothing loudly. She listened to the house with eyes and skin, measured each person's breathing, memorized the comfortable distance Liam kept like a brace. Quiet signs emerged. Noah slid a wooden block half a hand closer when she walked past. Ethan tapped his heel twice instead of once, and Liam lingered 1 beat longer at the stairs before returning to his paperwork. Numbers and progress reports couldn't capture those micro-movements, but the keeper of rhythm could. They were warmth. In her nameless notebook, Aaliyah marked a small square beside the word rhythm. One morning, while dusting the hallway shelf, Aaliyah found a silver frame pushed high. Inside was Emily's smile-tilted eyes, bright hair clipped loosely at the nape. The glass was hazy. Aaliyah wiped it clean and lowered the frame to a child's eye level. The next day, Noah stopped, pressed his fingertip to the glass lips, forming a word without sound. Ethan stood beside him, shoulders touching. Aaliyah didn't explain. She simply touched each boy's back once a single beat, as if saying yes. At the end of the hall, Liam saw and turned away, but something shifted in him. Memory was no longer locked high. It had sat down near the ground. With quiet rhythm, Aaliyah nudged the living room chairs closer together, not enough for the eye to notice, but enough for a small arm to reach. She chose midday, when the house slowed, bellies were warm, defenses low. She knew if there was a tremor, the glass table would make a fine string. If there was rhythm, the carpet would carry it gently. Still, one spark was missing. The spark rested in her cloth bag, the small speaker that had followed her through many kitchens. Not to make noise, but to build a bridge of rhythm. A voice, old and steady one that knew how to enter a home on a soft thread, Aretha Franklin. Aaliyah wasn't thinking of improvement or milestones. She only wanted to plant a sensory stake so the boys would know the world could answer kindly. Downstairs, Liam was reviewing Thursday's schedule with Dr. Harold Stein, one of the doctors who had followed the boys since birth, checking off the item progress evaluation. Order was his armor. Meanwhile, in the living room, a plan without bullet points was about to begin the plan of rhythm. That noon, everything was set in place. Sunlight slanting across the carpet. The wooden block resting between two small chairs. The glass table polished clear enough to reflect a breath. Noah and Ethan sat apart at the distance, adults called safe. Aaliyah set a tray of fruit on the table, glanced down the hall, silent. She lowered herself onto the small chair heels, pressing into the carpet like grounding roots. She reached into her cloth bag fingers, finding the cool surface of the speaker. She drew in a deep breath, knowing that if the ice was to crack, it had to begin here. And then with a press so small it was almost a whisper, she turned on the music. Aretha entered softly like a hand laid on glass. The table quivered slightly. The carpet caught the fine wave and carried it to two small pairs of feet. Noah looked up, first his eyes widening as if a window had just opened. Ethan stomped once, then again to confirm the sensation wasn't imagined. Aaliyah said nothing. She shrugged her shoulders, swayed her hips, tilted her head, gestures exaggerated like bold letters written in the air so the boys could both see and feel. She extended her hand, inviting neither pulling nor pushing. Noah slid off his chair. Ethan stood, knees trembling. Their first movements were clumsy, like the handwriting of children just learning, but what mattered was that they were writing. Laughter burst out then real, like the first crack across a sheet of ice. Aaliyah spun half a turn, her braid tracing a curve. Two small hands clapped along to the beat mouths, open but wordless because rhythm was already replacing language. At the far end of the hall, Liam's pen stopped. Something reached him, not quite sound, but life shifting. He rose, walking faster than usual, stopping at the living room doorway just as the chorus swelled. He had only meant to fetch the folder he'd forgotten, but the papers slipped from his hand, landing silent on the carpet. Before him, his two sons, laughing, jumping, clinging to the woman he had filed under good worker. Inside his chest, what had been buried since Emily's death pushed up through the soil hope. It hurt at his sternum, stung his eyes, and frightened him. Because if this was only a fleeting wave, the fall back would be bottomless. Aaliyah sensed the shadow in the doorway without turning. She didn't stop the music. She simply softened the amplitude so the rhythm was easier to catch, keeping the children at the center because the center of the room had to belong to them. Noah stumbled, nearly falling. Aaliyah touched two fingers to his elbow, catching him at the exact point, then letting go immediately so his small body could find its balance again. Ethan laughed at this, stomping harder, as if driving a stake into the ground for a simple declaration. If you fall, you stand back up. A memory flickered in Liam's mind, Emily in the kitchen one evening, hands covered in flour, teasing with a sway. Don't be so serious. He swallowed the memory like a bitter pill, but the scent of cinnamon still rose in his throat. He didn't intervene. He bore witness. He saw Noah look up with the light of someone finally awaited. Saw Ethan loosen by an inch, as if the earth itself had answered. Saw Aaliyah hold rhythm with her eyes, before her hands sealing each moment into the boy's memory. The music reached its end. No one rushed to restart it. A new silence settled over the living room, warm, full, as if the space had just relearned how to breathe after years. Ethan leaned against Aaliyah's hip. Noah exhaled, clutching the hem of her shirt. Liam stood at the threshold, closer now than when he had come close enough to hear laughter lingering in the carpet like a gentle aftershock. Aaliyah lifted her gaze. Her eyes met his in a subtle nod the moment belonging to the children was complete. The rest, whether the adults would dare step in, was the next chapter. And the next chapter would not be gentle. On Thursday morning, Dr. Harold Stein would arrive with his notebook and standards, bringing the cold line. Don't mistake emotional reaction for measurable progress. That sentence would strike exactly where hope and fear clashed hardest. The house might chill again. Liam might misplace his anger. Aaliyah might fall silent to protect the fire at the center. But for now, the picture freshly captured at noon remained warm. The thick carpet, the glass table, 2 small handprints on a woman's shirt, a man at the doorway, and a rhythm returned. From that rhythm language would grow clumsy, handprints longer glances, and an invitation no father could refuse on another evening. Dance Papa. Thursday morning arrived like a page with no margins. The house woke half a beat earlier. The kitchen warmed the faint scent of baked bread napkins folded in a straight line on the living room table. Liam Brooks tightened his tie a second time, though the first knot was perfect, his hand still adjusting the edge of his shirt unconsciously. The man, who usually moved as smoothly as a schedule now, carried the small ripples of expectation. On the carpet's edge, Noah tapped his fingertips against a wooden block, Ethan answering with a soft touch back a conversation without sound. Aaliyah Johnson counted her breaths slowly, keeping her voice low and steady so the house wouldn't be pulled off balance by adult tension. Dr. Harold Stein arrived on time, coat half-buttoned, silver glasses pushed high on his nose. His handshake was soft but quick, the faint smell of sanitizer clinging to his sleeve like habit. He placed his notebook on the glass table, pen clipped ready, his eyes gliding over the 2 boys with professional gentleness. "Let's review a few responses," he said, voice even like reading down a column of goals. Liam nodded. Aaliyah nodded. The air took on structure. First came the imitation task. Aaliyah sat down, arms open, smiling with her eyes. Noah began to lift his hand, but caught the hard-to-read gaze of the stranger. Through the glare of the glasses, he saw his own reflection warped and froze. Ethan, who was used to stomping to the rhythm of the floor, faltered when the doctor's pen clicked tick-tick against the page as though the ground had changed substance. Aaliyah shifted strategy, offering the simple sign for play, drawn in larger motion, her lips shaping the word without sound. A nod almost formed at the back of Noah's neck, then collapsed into a half bow. Ethan leaned in, fingers clutching the hem of her shirt. "Children often show mimicry," Dr. Stein said, not raising his voice, writing with steady hand. "In pleasant contexts, many will copy gestures. That's encouraging for relational development, but to call it progress, we need more consistent evidence." He looked up, eyes clinical, but not unkind. "Don't mix emotion with metrics." Liam heard it like a window slamming shut. Hours of standing at the living room threshold, thin fragments of laughter still clinging to the carpet, everything shrank back. He bent close to his son's, voice low but urgent. "Come on, boys. Show Papa. You did it before." The invitation became a command. Noah looked at his father's lips, then at the doctor's pen. His hand dropped. Ethan pressed himself against Aaliyah, forehead to her hip, as if searching for a familiar pillow. The session ended with empty boxes in the notebook, not enough data, continued monitoring needed. Dr. Stein capped his pen, speaking cautiously. "Joy is good, but don't let it become the yardstick." "I fear too much hope will harm the whole family," he added softly. No one answered. He said goodbye with the same handshake as before, and walked down the hallway past the silver photo frame. Emily's smile inside for some reason looked sharper today. The door closed with a faint click. Silence fell like a tablecloth pulled from the glass table, everything still in place, yet with the sensation of slipping. Liam held his posture 1 second longer, then turned to Aaliyah. The shame of having performed his sons before another man sought escape through anger. "What have you done to them?" he asked, words harder and colder than he intended. Laughter is nice, but today, when it mattered nothing, Aaliyah let each word land. She placed a hand on Ethan's back, steadying his breath, then looked straight at Liam. "I didn't do anything," she said, slow and clear. "I was there, so they dared to be there. Joy isn't a trick. It's fuel. Without it, every test is just a wall." Her voice wasn't loud, but it had an edge. "They need structure." Liam replied, his eyes sharpening with the reflex of a man saving himself with familiar logic. Not entertainment. False hope. Hurts. The word false shrank the room. Noah lifted his head at his father, learning on his lips the shape of disappointment, even if he couldn't hear the sound. "There's no false," Aaliyah said, softening half a tone. "Only short and long. Joy is short, but it opens the door to long." She could have said more, but stopped there. Sometimes restraint is the only thing that keeps a conversation from breaking apart. Liam turned away, retreating into his office, the door left ajar. Sunlight drifted across the floor like a passer-by that wouldn't stop. Aaliyah cleared the fruit tray hands, keeping steady rhythm, though her smile had withdrawn. Noah and Ethan clung closer than usual, their small fingers reaching for something solid, the hem of her shirt, her wrist the edge of her cloth bag. Inside it, the small speaker lay still like a warm stone, buried under sand. The house returned to safety mode, orderly, clean, cold. An evening was coming that would require something no notebook held a gesture made without permission. The days that followed ran on inertia. Liam stayed longer in his office, learning how to stay busy so he wouldn't pass the living room. Aaliyah did everything on time by the book, but cut out the harmless little antics that once made Noah bury his face in a pillow with laughter. Ethan stopped stomping without reason. His feet learned how to stay still. The house held its balance, but like a rope strung tight between two posts upright, no one falling, yet no one moving forward. That Thursday evening, after a silent meal, Aaliyah gathered the dishes and washed them under warm water until steam fogged the cupboard glass. Noah sat on a chair. Ethan leaned against the table's edge, both of their eyes fixed on the cloth bag tucked beneath the seat. No one said anything. Noah slid down, pulled the bag out. The move was so successful he let out a giggle, soft as a breeze. Ethan saw the mini-speaker peeking from the opening, his eyes lit up as if someone had flipped a switch behind them. Aaliyah turned just in time to see Noah set the speaker on the floor. Ethan crouching beside him, fingertips tapping the plastic surface like knocking on a door. They are inviting. She thought, her throat tightening because the invitation didn't pass through words. She stood still for one beat, the beat of someone once accused of fake miracles, until Noah reached out, clapped twice, clumsily, Ethan stomping to seal it. The hesitation slid off her shoulders like a drop of water. "Okay," Aaliyah whispered for herself. She pressed play. Not Aretha this time. Another recording brighter with a clearer beat. Noah sprang up like a spring. Ethan laughed in bursts, his feet rediscovering the rhythm they had buried in the carpet. Aaliyah didn't rush into the center. She stepped along the edge, letting the boys lead. Noah spun a short, wobbly turn. Ethan copied, but added a deliberate stomp at the end, like a period. The kitchen, where water still ran and soap suds clung to dishes, suddenly became a small studio, the tiled floor standing in for a wooden stage, the low light bulb for a spotlight. Upstairs, Liam set down his pen because he heard something hard to name. Not quite music, not quite voices, just life's momentum shifting. He rose, came down the stairs, stopped at the kitchen doorway. What he saw was something he once thought broken his sons, starting joy on their own, finding a way into each other, and the woman standing beside them not claiming center stage. Noah saw his father first. He didn't speak. He signed with small hands trembling with excitement, a gesture still crooked but clear in meaning, "Dance Papa." Ethan echoed, clumsier hand pressing his chest before reaching toward Liam as if adding, "Join us." The distance from the doorway to the kitchen center wasn't much, but tonight it stretched like a hallway. Liam felt Dr. Stein's cautions flick past like cards. Don't mix emotion with metrics, don't hope too much. Then he looked at Noah, the boy who read sunlight with his eyes now, reading him with a waiting gaze. Looked at Ethan, the boy who learned the world through his feet, now stomping out a beat of "come in." He understood the only measure here was whether he stepped forward or not. He stepped. At first, just an awkward sway of a man who'd never practiced. Noah laughed out loud like someone flicking water's surface. Ethan scampered in circles, stomping an exclamation point. Aaliyah lifted her hand, not leading, just setting tempo with a nod of her eyes. Liam bent low to their level arms, opening instinctively. Someone had taken off his armor of schedules without him noticing when. The next moves came easier. Not graceful, but right for a kitchen where soap still clung to the sink. Right for a child once afraid to fall. Now stomping on purpose, right for a man once standing at the edge, now moving into the middle. Noah tugged his father's hand. Ethan clung tight to his arm, as if tying the rope back together. In Liam's mind, the silent bullet points fell away. In their place were two heartbeats not matching, but fitting. The song was short, but enough. When the last note dissolved into white tile, all three stood catching breath, no one needing to say good job or next time. Aaliyah watched it like a photograph developing itself, the image rising slowly, solidly. She didn't intrude. She stepped half back, leaving space for thanks that didn't need to be spoken. Liam smoothed Noah's hair, pressed his forehead to Ethan's. In the glance he sent Aaliyah there was no grandeur, only the gratitude of someone who had lost his way, and found it again through a simple gesture. He didn't say sorry for the harsh words of days before. The apology lay in the way he bent low to hug his sons, in the small but great decision tomorrow night he would learn a new sign before bed. The kitchen warmed in a way no clock could measure. On the sink's surface, soap suds receded, leaving a crescent of water trace, of a turn, clumsy but real. At the door, the night breeze slipped in, carrying damp grass. No one spoke. Yet everyone heard a thread had just been rejoined, not by theory but by steps. That night, when the house dimmed, Noah pulled his blanket up to his chin. Ethan gave one last light stomp into the air before sleep, like signing his name to the day. Aaliyah stood in the hallway, her hand on the silver photo frame tapping one soft beat of thanks to the woman inside. And Liam, before closing his office door, pulled a blank note from the drawer. On the first line, he wrote a single word in blue ink, the awkward scrawl of a man learning another language, love. Then he set the pen down, went upstairs, paused at his children's doorway, as every night. This time, he didn't count 10 breaths. He stepped one more. The afternoon settled over the house like a thin blanket. The kitchen was quiet, the living room tidy. On the carpet, faint heel prints lingered like leftover notes of a song. Aaliyah Johnson sat cross-legged beside the two boys, a thick notebook open before her, its pages crowded with arrows, rough sketches of hands and oversized letters. For weeks, she had studied in secret each night, silent videos on loop repeating signs in the mirror until her wrists ached. She had no formal class. She had a reason. We play. Her hands moved slowly, exaggerated as if writing into the air. Her lips shaped the word play. Her eyes smiling, shoulders loose. Noah watched intently, the pride of an observer showing in the tilt of his head. Ethan leaned forward, knees lifting half an inch from the rug, his body ready to leap before his mind caught up. Aaliyah repeated play. Fingers touched, then opened like a door. Noah tried. His hands trembled, finger joints stiffening halfway through. Ethan copied, adding an unconscious stomp on the carpet. "That's it," Aaliyah whispered small enough for the words to be only an exchange of eyes. She moved on to happy palm to chest, opening outward, her smile blooming slowly, like a flower in shade. Ethan followed first his fingers, wandering, then correcting. Noah caught up his eyes, curving into crescents. At the doorway, Liam Brooks stood frozen, a blue ink pen still in hand. To Omniscience, it seemed as though a faint scent of cinnamon had found its way back into him, along with shame. All these years he had never learned to speak with his own children through hands. He looked at Aaliyah's notebook, its clumsy but persistent drawings, and realized some things must be signed not on paper, but in the body. One more word Aaliyah said to the boys, her voice steady, eyes flicking a small nod of permission toward Liam. "Love." She crossed her arms to her chest, touching herself as if to make a vow. Noah followed, cheeks flushed pink. Ethan came a beat later, hugging himself, tight, laughing because he was hugging himself. The air was warm enough to go further. Aaliyah glanced toward Liam for a second, then turned back to the children, Papa. Her hands shaped the simple sign, the name of the man still standing at the edge. Noah's head lifted sharply. Ethan turned toward the doorway. Both pairs of eyes searched for the person inside the word. Liam swallowed hard. His pen hand was damp with sweat. He had signed countless contracts, but never his identity with a gesture so small. "Try it," Aaliyah said, not to the children, but to him, yet her eyes stayed on the boys, keeping the center where it belonged. Liam raised his hand thumb, halting halfway, like someone trying to write with the wrong hand. He mimicked, clumsily, Papa. The gesture wasn't graceful, but it was right. The room compressed for a beat, like a musician hitting the true string after many missed notes. Noah's mouth opened, echoing instantly, hand to chest, then outward toward Liam. A sound escaped his lips like a pebble skipping water. "Pa, Pa." Ethan lunged forward, hugging Liam's arm, trying to chase the sound. "Pa, Pa." The children didn't wait for praise. They pulled their father into the circle, just opened. Some things the body understands before the mind names them. Liam dropped to his knees, not to beg, not to repent, but because it was the only way to be eye level with his sons. Aaliyah stepped half back, widening the space. Noah touched his father's face with a dry palm. Ethan pressed his forehead close, his breath warm with the trace of milk. Liam signed Papa again, firmer this time. Two small hands echoed him like a reverberation. Above the glass table, the afternoon light shifted, reflecting three figures at the same height. To Omniscience, Aaliyah's mind flickered with the image of a classroom with no blackboard where the tuition was sore. Wrists, and the reward was a gaze that said, "Papa, join us." In Liam's heart a short sentence formed, "I've stood at the threshold long enough," and in the boys' chests a new rhythm settled steady as a rediscovered beat. The lesson ended without applause. Aaliyah closed the notebook. Noah tugged her finger, asking to see love again. Ethan drew a silly curve in the air and laughed at himself. Liam rose slowly, the blue ink pen tucked away, his hand still warm from just becoming a word. The scene closed with a small detail, a streak of sunlight sliding across the glass table, brushing the fingertips with invisible ink. No one spoke grand words, but everyone heard a very clear presence here. Night came with a different kind of silence, not emptiness, but the weariness of muscles used all day. Liam sat alone in his study, the desk lamp casting light across the polished wood, so the grains rose like unwritten lines. The drawer beneath his hand stuck slightly. It had been a long time since it was opened. Inside lay a yellowed envelope. The seal darkened with age, Emily's name at the top line in a faint, trembling stroke of blue ink. He had written the letter 2 weeks after the funeral, on a night when the twins cried for no reason, on a morning when he thought he was not enough to be a father. The letter was never sent, there was nowhere to send it. He took the envelope and stood. The stairs seemed steeper than any night before. He stopped at Aaliyah's door, knocked 3 times, as if asking to step into a story not his own. The door opened. Aaliyah wore a plain t-shirt, her hair hastily tied, eyes marked with the fatigue of a day spent in patience. Liam didn't speak long. He simply held out the envelope. "I once wrote this," he said hoarsely, "for Emily." Aaliyah moved aside, letting him sit at the edge of the bed, like family visiting late at night. She didn't ask if he was sure. She didn't soothe with "everything will be okay." She just opened the letter. The paper rustled with the faintest sound. The words inside held no poetry. They spoke of fear, fear of holding his children wrong, fear of seeing their mother's eyes, and choking in his chest, fear of tomorrow, with nothing to say to children who couldn't hear, fear of choosing the edge of life and staying there forever. They spoke of a guilt no court could judge. He was alive, Emily was not. At the end, a short line crossed out and rewritten, "If you were here, just tell me one word." Aaliyah folded the letter as one would put away a relic, setting it on her lap for a beat before looking up. She would be proud, she said, without patting it with empty comfort. Not for the company, not for the account, but because you're still here. Staying is one of the hardest verbs. Liam gave a short laugh, a strange sound on the lips of a man unaccustomed to softening. Afterward, his eyes burned. Aaliyah didn't move to hug him, nor offer a tissue. She placed one hand against his face, the hand of a black woman who had learned how to touch cold houses without freezing herself. The gesture was not a promise, not a salvation. It was a hook for someone drifting in current to hold for a few seconds. "You don't have to be enough alone," she said quietly. "No one is enough alone." Liam's back released a long breath, as if armor had been unlatched at the spine. He spoke of fragments not in the letter night, sitting outside the children's room with his hand on the knob, too afraid to turn it. Mornings drafting emails to their grandparents, only to delete them. Afternoons ready to break at the clang of dishes, thinking it was a baby's cry. Aaliyah listened without interruption, only nodding at times like a steady pulse of "still here." When silence returned, it was not empty. It had breath. It had the scent of old paper. It had the ticking of the next room's clock. Liam placed the letter back in its envelope, but this time he didn't bury it deep in the drawer. He set it on the top shelf, easy to see without stabbing the eye. "Thank you," he said, the words falling onto the carpet and standing there, not rushing away. On his way back to the study, Liam paused at the hallway where the silver frame stood. Emily smiled from the photograph with a familiar tilt. He touched the metal edge with his fingertip. There was no apology, only acknowledgement he was still here, the children were still growing, and she was present in the light. He dimmed the lamps, leaving a thin stripe of gold across the hall, enough to keep the children's sleep soft. That night, Aaliyah reopened her notebook. On a new page, she drew 3 signs: play, happy love. Then she wrote PAPA in large letters, beside it a small note to herself. To let someone step into the circle, sometimes you only need to step half back. She closed the notebook, turned off the light. Outside the window, the wind slipped through the tree's leaves, whispering in a language needing no translation. The scene closed with a single artifact, the yellowed envelope on the top shelf beside the blue ink pen. No one read another line aloud, but everyone knew that from here, the house would open to a different morning where memory was no longer a wall, but a bridge for 4 people to cross. Morning opened with a thin slice of sky. The backyard was still damp with nightgrass etched with beads of dew. Aaliyah Johnson pressed small wooden stakes into the ground, tying to them ribbons of red, yellow, blue, and green, each color an invitation step. She wasn't building a racetrack. She was laying a path. On the porch, Liam Brooks stood with arms crossed, fingers gripping the railing, white, watching without intruding. Two boys hovered at the edge of the grass. Noah gazing at the ribbons as if reading a new line of text. Ethan stomping once on the lawn to test whether the earth would listen. Aaliyah crouched low, her hands signing slow and large walk one step. Her lips shaped the words, her eyes smiling. Noah stepped first. The grass dipped beneath his small shoes. He swayed for balance, then slid forward half a foot more. Ethan followed, close knees trembling, but his hand brushed the blue ribbon as if borrowing its string. A breeze stirred and the ribbons trembled. The path breathed. From the porch, Liam followed each step as if it were his own heartbeat. Inside him, an old fear rose and fell with each movement. Will they fall? Will they get up? Will they fall again? He gripped the railing harder, but he did not call out. He let their bodies answer the ground themselves. Aaliyah didn't rush to lead. She trailed 2 beats behind, close enough to catch, but not to overtake. She signed strong again, good with her eyes, praise that didn't weigh them down. Noah slipped past the red ribbon, his body tilting, then pushed his hand into the grass, springing up with the reflex he had learned inside the house. If you fall, you stand. Ethan waited, stomped once like a period, then moved on. They reached the yellow band, bright as the sun, and Noah turned his head. His gaze collided with the porch. There, Liam stood unmoving with the face of a man more used to watching than joining. Noah signed with small trembling hands, "Come, Papa." The motion was stiff fingers shaky, but the meaning was clear. Ethan echoed clumsier, adding a hand to his chest before reaching it out toward Liam, as if adding, "Join us." The distance from porch to grass was only a few steps, but today it stretched like a journey. Inside, Liam Dr. Stein's warnings flashed like cue cards. Don't mix emotion with data, don't hope too much. Then Noah's eyes, the child who read sunlight, held him still. Ethan's stomp, the child who spoke with his feet, set a beat before him. Liam stepped down. 1 stair, 2. His shoes met the grass wet with dew. He didn't run. He tried small steps first, shoulders tight. Noah's smile broke open. Ethan's voice burst out like a pebble bouncing on water. Aaliyah stepped back half a pace, yielding the center. She heard momentum gathering somewhere behind Liam like wind shifting before a gentle rain. And then he ran. Not the stride of a CEO on a runway, but the lunge of a father who knows delay is the enemy of an invitation. He dropped to his knees before the blue ribbon arms open. Noah leapt first, clutching his shirt hem. Ethan slammed into his chest, forehead pressed to his sternum. 3 breaths collided, not synchronized but in harmony. A sob escaped Liam, not staged tears, but the sound of a body forgiving itself for standing at the threshold too long. His signs came clumsy love, Papa love repeated like a man learning his alphabet. Noah answered with a crooked but eager echo. Ethan answered by clinging tighter. The ribbons fluttered around them like celebratory flags. Aaliyah stood 3 steps away, one hand to her chest. She didn't lift a camera. She didn't search for proof. She witnessed, in the truest sense, letting the moment pass through her without addition. In her eyes flickered Emily's face from the silver frame, a tilted smile, warm gaze. No dialogue between the 2 women, one gone, one here, but a slow, certain nod the bridge had been placed in the right spot. The climax didn't stretch. It dissolved into small acts. Noah counted ribbons with his hands. Ethan challenged himself by walking backward. Liam laughed an awkward laugh, but real. At the end of the path, they didn't raise their arms in triumph. They sat on the grass, foreheads touching for one beat. On the porch, sunlight slid half a hand's span further. In Aaliyah's hands, the sign "It's enough" appeared in a tiny gesture. The scene closed with one token: Liam's knees stained damp, crescent-shaped marks of dew darkening his trousers. No one wiped them. The mark stayed like the signature of a man who had stepped into the circle. Time was no longer trapped on the stair railing. It flowed through the living room, kitchen, and hallways like a song that had found its rhythm again. In the months that followed, the Brooks mansion changed its face without changing its bricks. Socks left, scattered on the steps, toy cars lined up along the windowsill, scribbled drawings taped crookedly to the fridge. Laughter wasn't perfect, but it was present. Noah and Ethan ran around the glass table, then stopped in place to sign a new word. Liam learned how to sit cross-legged on the carpet, hands smeared with watercolor lips, forming "Papa loves you" with both voice and hands. Aaliyah remained the steady current beneath it all, adjusting the beat when it faltered, stepping back half a pace when needed, stepping forward when the center was empty. One warm afternoon, Liam decided to host a small gathering in the backyard. Not a formal party, just a few neighbors who already knew the boys. 2 therapists who had walked with them from the beginning, and Dr. Harold Stein invited with a simple note: "Come see a house that is alive." A wooden table sat beneath the tree canopy. Muffins lopsided from small hands, cookies pressed with thumbprints, lemonade sweating inside a glass pitcher. Guests arrived. At the edge of the crowd, Dr. Stein stood with a paper cup, his gaze no longer the cold line of his notes. He observed like a man at the back of an auditorium, knowing the important things don't fit neatly on a scale. Noah tugged at his sleeve, signing hello and "My name is Noah," with fingers stumbling out of order. Ethan stomped once like a period, then lifted a cookie to his chest as an invitation. Dr. Stein smiled, slipped his pen into his pocket. "Hello, Noah. Hello, Ethan," he answered with his hands not graceful but right. Some of his stiffness fell away. At the edge of the lawn, Aaliyah straightened a tray of pastries the wind had nudged. Unaware, she stood at the heart of the larger picture. Liam stepped up with a glass of lemonade for her. They didn't need polite openings. Together, they looked out at the grass. Noah in an oversized hat, Ethan in a superhero cape. The boys ran trailing ribbons they had unfastened from their stakes, pulling them like kite tails. The guests laughed, one dabbed at an eye, another clapped when Noah's hand signed happy. "You brought them back," Liam said quietly, as if afraid to drop something fragile. "And you brought me back to them." The words didn't crash onto anyone. They fell between them and stayed. Aaliyah didn't claim the credit. She touched his forearm lightly, a grounding gesture, and looked back at the lawn. "They opened themselves," she said. "I was just standing there when the door swung." Liam nodded, and in that nod the weight of his old shame loosened the misplaced anger the nights counting 10 breaths at the doorway. He realized that sometimes staying is the hardest verb, and he had stayed. As if on cue, the boys raced toward them. Ethan signed story and more cookies in a string of gestures adorable and wrong. Noah tugged Aaliyah's hand, grinning crookedly, then tugged Liam's too. Not a command, but an invitation. All 4 sat on a blanket beneath the tree. Pastries passed from hand to hand. Lemonade spilled a drop. The ribbons lay curled on the grass like colored snakes at rest. At the edge of the lawn, Dr. Stein glanced back at his notes, a page left blank between 2 lines. He didn't add anything. He folded the notebook shut, pocketed the pen, then tapped the air lightly in rhythm with the children's laughter. His standards hadn't vanished. They had shifted place, leaving room for what no scale could measure. The sun sank lower, scattering gold across hair and hands. Noah broke a cookie in half, giving Ethan one piece as if by ritual. Ethan split his share again for Aaliyah, then remembered to feed a bite to Liam. An awkward act turned into the clearest sentence of together. No one said family. They made it. The afternoon's closing scene needed no soundtrack. The wind stirred the ribbons on the grass. Condensation slid on a glass. A bird shifted branches. Beneath the tree, 4 people leaned into each other, not posed, just present. Aaliyah burst out laughing when Ethan fumbled a sign and corrected himself. Liam bent down to hear Noah tell a story in his hands with no beginning or end. Someone at a far table snapped a blurry picture. That photo, if looked at closely, caught streaks of sunlight, a bead of lemonade on the rim of a cup, and a ribbon curved by chance into a heart shape on the grass. No one staged it. No one directed it. It simply happened when a house redefined itself, not by furniture, not by a nameplate, but by arms that fit just enough small hands learning to speak, and adults who knew when to step half back so the space could fill with laughter. Morning slipped down the hallway like a thin ribbon. Noah and Ethan ran circles around the glass table, then stopped suddenly before the silver frame Aaliyah had once lowered. In the photo, Emily tilted her head in a smile, eyes bright. The boys stood close, shoulders touching. Noah reached out, pressed a fingertip to the glass, a slow, deliberate gesture, then turned to Ethan. No one spoke. No one needed to. Noah lifted his hand, searching his memory for the signs he had just begun to learn, and formed one clumsy but clear word, Mama. The air paused for a beat. Ethan watched, then copied his fingers, wandering before finding their way. The word hung in space like a bell with no sound. Aaliyah Johnson stood just behind them, arms still wrapped around a basket of folded laundry. She set it down on the rug, adding no words. She let the moment take its full measure. Liam Brooks appeared at the far end of the hall files tucked under his arm, his steps halting. Inside him, something shifted. His chest tightened, as if a warm stone had been set against his sternum. For 3 years he had locked Emily out of his children's sight, believing silence could build a wall against the storm. Now, the wall was opening by itself. Noah looked up, saw his father repeated the sign, Mama. Ethan followed, eyes unblinking. Liam approached like a man walking on thin ice. He set the files down on the table, knelt to their level. In front of him, Emily's face in the photo. Behind him, 2 faces, half his, half hers. A sentence brushed his tongue, the kind someone once warned will hurt more if you say it, but the sentence reshaped itself. Yes, that's Mama. He spoke softly, then signed it again, slowly for them to read with their eyes. Noah smiled a thin smile, but one that went straight into Liam's chest. Ethan pressed his forehead to Liam's shoulder, his other hand touching the photo as if in greeting. Aaliyah stepped half back, her hand against her chest, allowing herself one strong breath. She had taken a risk in lowering the photo to the children's reach. Now she saw the gate open, not to unleash a flood, but to let wind move through the house. In Liam's mind, an old scene replayed Emily, laughing in the kitchen, one hand on her belly, teasing, "Don't be so serious," the smell of cinnamon covering the counter. That memory had once cut like a knife. Now it wrapped like warm cloth across his back. He didn't sob, didn't deliver a speech. Only his throat burned, and his hand by itself signed love once to the photo, once to the 2 children. The house shifted tempo. From that morning on, Noah and Ethan often signed Mama when passing the hallway, a small ritual like roll call. After dinner, Noah would point to the photo and sign story. Liam would sit on the rug, telling small, weightless memories, Emily forgetting to switch off the fridge light, Emily spilling too much cinnamon, Emily spinning once in the kitchen to make the whole house laugh. Each story he ended with a simple sign so the boys could catch the meaning. Ethan stopped once each time he liked a detail. It became the family's new punctuation. Aaliyah didn't embellish. She pulled chairs closer, poured warm water into small cups, and at the right moment signed cues next, done pause. She kept the stories in rhythm so they flowed without drowning in tears. She knew to remember without breaking down is a difficult art. That night, before turning off the hallway light, Liam stopped at the frame, touched the silver edge with his fingertip. He no longer had to hide. He didn't need to beg. He simply acknowledged, "You are here in the way of light. We, your children, and I have heard you now." The dim glow wrapped the glass, reflecting 3 shadows, passing uneven but aligned in direction. The scene closed with one artifact, a faint handprint left on the glass right where Emily's smile was. No one mentioned it. It stayed like a note in a song that had found its key. The follow-up appointment a month later arrived without a drumbeat. Dr. Harold Stein returned, coat neat, notebook new. But there was something different in the way he entered. He looked at the house before he wrote. The faint scent of baked goods lingered. On the carpet lay flashcards Aaliyah had drawn herself. "Play happy love, Papa Mama." Clumsy lines, but true. "We don't need to do a test," Aaliyah said softly. "Just watch an ordinary day." Dr. Stein nodded. He set his notebook down, not rushing to open it. Noah began as he did every morning. He signed play, pulling Ethan toward the stack of blocks. Ethan answered, happy, touching his chest, then opening his hand like a flower. Liam sat cross-legged, a cushion in his lap, eyes following without commanding. Aaliyah kept the tempo with her gaze a nod when the pace slowed, a light tap on the carpet when it rushed. Dr. Stein observed the boys' shared focus, waited their turn, switched roles. He wrote a few tiny words, joint attention, turn-taking. Then Noah picked up the card marked Mama and placed it by the blocks like setting a landmark. He signed story and looked at Liam. The father understood instantly, no interpreter needed, and told a small memory, signing keywords as he spoke. Ethan punctuated at the perfect moment with a stomp of his heel when a detail delighted him. The group laughed. The laughter didn't overpower. It fell right into rhythm. "Show me, Papa," Dr. Stein said, but his voice was rounder than before. Ethan answered immediately with his hands, then hugged Liam's arm as if underlining it. Noah added love at the end, like an exclamation mark. Aaliyah didn't translate. She let the doctor's eyes do the work. He smiled, just a little, but enough to shift the notebook from the center of the room. "The children are communicating functionally," he said, turning to Liam, "not just imitating. These behaviors persist across days, they connect," and he paused half a beat as if checking his own tone. "They actively invite others into the circle." Invite was not a word that showed up often in his textbooks. Today it stayed. Liam didn't cross his arms as always. He leaned back on one hand on the carpet, the other hand open. "We follow the rhythm of the house," he said. "I learn a few signs each night, and she," he nodded toward Aaliyah, "keeps the beat." Dr. Stein glanced at her. She smiled just enough. "Then I suggest a new measure," the doctor said, notebook half open. "We won't discard data, but let's add everyday markers, number of invitations the children extend, number of times they wait, number of role switches without breaking. These things aren't clean to count, but if the family notes them briefly, we'll have a different thickness of progress." He looked up. "I came here with a steel ruler. Perhaps I should also bring cloth tape." The words softened the room. Aaliyah nodded, her eyes warm as a thank you. Noah and Ethan cared nothing for measures. They kept building their block tower, each placing, waiting, laughing when it leaned, steadying it together with 2 small hands. The session, if it could be called that, ended with a moment. Dr. Stein did not record. Noah suddenly handed him the happy card. The doctor accepted, returned the sign, awkward but genuine. Ethan stomped once in approval. The notebook closed softly like a door well oiled. Before leaving, Dr. Stein paused at the silver frame. Over his shoulder, he saw 3 figures in the living room, one adult stepping back, 2 children stepping forward, a circle closing and opening again. He left no long directives, just one line repositioned in his mouth. Continue like this. When needed, I'll come not to measure but to confirm what you've lived. The door shut. Inside, Aaliyah gathered the cards, Liam lifted Ethan so he could place the final block. Noah tilted his head to judge the balance. No one said progress. They did it inviting, waiting, steadying. Light shifted across the glass table, reflecting a new kind of ruler, without markings the reach of open arms. The scene closed with one artifact, a note on the fridge written in blue ink. Invitations 7, waits 5, turn swaps 4, and beneath a clumsy but clear word Liam had written with his practicing left hand enough. Rain fell on the city as if someone had pulled a heavy curtain across the rooftops. Lightning tore the sky, then the lights went out. The mansion sank into a darkness deep enough to hear people breathing. Aaliyah Johnson switched on her phone's flashlight, its tiny beam sweeping across the glass table. The rug, the silver frame. Outside, the rain drummed. Inside, another rhythm was about to start. Noah flinched at the thunder, his eyes scanning for something to hold on to. Ethan stomped once on the rug, then again, as if testing whether the ground still answered. Liam Brooks rummaged in a drawer, pulling out a few old candles, his hand trembling as he struck a match, a small but steady spark, the smell of sulfur cutting the air. Candlelight flickered faces drifting on the wall like photos developing in a dark room. Aaliyah didn't reach for music. She placed the silent mini-speaker on the table, then tapped her chest to signal here. She sat cross-legged on the rug, tapping her fingertips on the floor, tum-tum. Slow clear. Noah joined in by drumming on a wooden block, Ethan by stomping his heel. The darkness gathered neatly around the circle they had formed. The rain outside played backup, not lead. Liam looked at Aaliyah. She wasn't leading, just setting the beat. He understood his part. He signed play, happy in the candlelight, his fingers stiff at first, then loosening. Noah answered with Papa and Love Ethan stamping a full stop after each phrase. Another crash of thunder. Noah jolted, eyes wide. Aaliyah shifted tempo immediately from slow to steady, giving him something unchanged to hold on to. Liam moved closer, shoulder to shoulder with his son. He didn't clutch. He opened his arm, waiting. Noah grasped it like a climber finding rock. The dark lost its menace once everyone knew where they were in the circle. Aaliyah struck another match, lit another candle. Flame rose, wax dripped down the edge, pooling in a white blur. She signed Rainwind, then Safe. The boys caught it quickly. Ethan added Home with 2 hands, shaping a roof. Liam smiled in the golden light, awkward but true. He signed together in here. From her cloth bag, Aaliyah pulled a handful of wooden spoons. Orchestra. She signed Eyes Playful. Each took a rhythm. Liam drummed his thigh tum-tum. Noah tapped the block tack-tack. Ethan stomped thud. Aaliyah clapped her palms. Bop, bop. Tiny sounds, but enough to travel through skin. The rain became the backdrop. The house was heard from within. The thread was fragile, one thunderclap too close, one old memory returning, and it could have snapped. It didn't. For one simple reason, rhythm had something to cling to. Noah listened with his eyes, Ethan with his feet, Liam with his open hand, Aaliyah with her breathing. When the lights came back, the 4 of them didn't stop right away. Aaliyah snuffed the candles gently so the wax wouldn't spill more. Noah studied the cooled drip on the plate, pressing a fingertip into it like marking a milestone. Ethan gave one last stomp, a light period. Liam signed done and good. No one clapped, but everyone smiled. Inside, Liam, the old letter shifted place from wound to keepsake. That night, he opened the envelope and added a small page, rainy night. 4 people played rhythm. Not afraid anymore, he didn't seal it. He left it open like the windows the house had been slowly learning to open these past months. The scene closed with one artifact, a bead of wax hardened on the plate's edge, shaped like a tear, held still. No one wiped it away. It stayed, reminding them that even the darkest nights carry their own rhythm, and the house had learned how to play along. The sunny day was gentle, like a well-washed cloth. In the backyard sat a small wooden table, holding a pocket photo printer, a stack of glossy paper, and a wooden frame, still smelling faintly of fresh paint. Aaliyah set out a plate of lopsided cookies, glasses of sweating lemonade. Noah wore the oversized hat again. Ethan kept his old cape attire for a ceremony with no ceremony. The chosen photo was not perfect. A little blurred light, skewed hair, messy. But it was real. Liam kneeling in the grass. Noah clutching his shirt. Ethan pressing his forehead to his chest. Aaliyah half a step back with her hand on her heart. In the far background, a ribbon bent by chance into the shape of a heart. The printer whirred, pushing the picture out millimeter by millimeter. All 4 waited, none impatient. Waiting itself was a rhythm they had learned. Liam held the wooden frame, his eyes falling on Emily's silver one just an arm's length away. Not replacement. Dialogue. He beckoned the boys closer. Noah signed Mama toward the silver frame, then home toward the empty wooden one. Ethan added together in love. Short words fitting together like small bricks paving a path. Aaliyah gave no explanation. She pulled her hands back at the exact moment the boys' small ones placed the new photo into the frame. "Choose a spot," Liam said softly. Noah pointed to the shelf just below Emily's photo, not level, not too far, just enough so anyone passing would see both in one glance. Ethan nodded hard, stomped once as if signing a pact. Liam set the wooden frame there. Aaliyah let out a breath. In the quiet, something shifted in the house, the hallway warmed by half a degree, the staircase dried as if brushed by sun. Dr. Stein stopped by late that afternoon to return the pen Liam had left behind. He stood before the 2 frames, said nothing clinical, just tilted his head enough to catch all 4 reflected in the glass. "The right place," he said, then stepped back. That evening, the 4 gathered in the living room. The glass table was still there, the rug still thick, but laughter lingered longer on the surfaces. Liam pulled the fridge note. Invitations 9, waits 6, turn swaps 5. He held the blue pen, looked at it for a moment, then underlined one word, enough. He didn't add numbers, enough. Here was not an ending, it was the fullness of a day. Aaliyah opened her notebook. On a new page, she drew 4 signs, play, happy, love, home. Beneath, she wrote, "For a house to breathe together, it doesn't need to be loud, it needs to be steady." Noah leaned against her, his finger brushing the pen. Ethan rested on Liam, his small hand, drumming a rhythm on his father's knee, tum-tum. "Story." Noah signed toward the silver frame. Liam understood and began. A small memory: Emily once put too much cinnamon in the cookies and everyone sneezed. Aaliyah laughed, Ethan stomped. Noah signed happy. The story had no lesson, it had breath. When the last line fell, Aaliyah sealed it with the tiniest done, not closing, holding. Night fell softly. Liam brought the boys upstairs, no longer counting 10 breaths at the threshold. He went in, pulled up their blankets, signed love once for Noah, once for Ethan. Aaliyah dimmed the hall lights, pausing before the 2 frames. She tapped once on the silver edge, once on the wooden one. 2 surfaces, both warm. The final scene needed no fireworks, just a photo reflecting 4 passing shadows, a ribbon fallen into a bracket on the shelf, and a bead of wax still clinging to the candle plate. No one said the end, but everyone knew this house had learned to breathe. And rhythm from now on would remain. From a mansion frozen in grief to one that breathed in the rhythm of small hands, the story closed with 2 frames standing side by side and a family that had learned to stay. Which moment made your heart beat the loudest, the first dance in the living room? The invitation, "Come Papa" in the ribboned garden, or the sign Mama before the frame? If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs a rhythm of hope. Hit like, share, and subscribe to stay with us for the next stories.